everyone, welcome to Zonan Canada. Karl Olsen is joining me today.
What's good?
I wasn't planning on doing a new episode quite so soon, but some really big news just dropped, and
What's that, Jesse?
I think we have to talk about it.
That news.
Yeah, probably the biggest anime-related news of the year so far. The French dub of Cheese Sweet Home is now airing on Radio Canada weekday mornings at 8:50 a.m., marking the long-awaited return of anime on our French national public broadcaster. I could not be happier about this.
I think you're being facetious, Jesse. I think you're being a little bit facetious about what's the biggest news.
Only a little bit. I think it is big news.
No, it is actually kind of good because it would seem like there is quite an opportunity to fill a little time with some short form anime.
I did. It's a little interesting because I noticed that Radio Canada actually has less children's content than the English CBC does, which is
impressive
kind of
because there isn't like a ton on English CBC these days. So like it used to be, the mornings of English CBC on weekdays would have a pretty solid block, but now, in part because BC has knowledge filling that gap a little bit. There's also just stuff like Treehouse and all these other specifically children's-related networks that are kind of the same decimation that has happened in the rest of in the U.S. has happened up here when it comes to children's television on broadcast. So the fact that any's turning back up.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not aware, Radio Canada through the 80s and early 90s ran tons of anime, like World Masterpiece Theater, Cat's Eye, and City Hunter. Yeah, those aired on Radio Canada.
I hope not as children's shows.
I'm not sure.
I wake up in the morning and it's just City Hunter Cap and News. It's not necessarily the most positive.
Well, I think it may have run later. I'm not sure. This is why I need someone who is more familiar with that stuff directly to come on the podcast.
If you know about French Canadian anime, you contact Jesse.
Yes, please do.
Or contact me, but I'll just make you contact Jesse, so cut out the middleman.
Yeah, contact me on the contact form at zonan.ca, or through Twitter at ZonanCanada, or email zonancanada@gmail.com, because I really want to put this episode together. But yeah, it's nice that it comes full circle with Cheese Sweet Home, even though it's just a 3-minute anime. It airs at, it doesn't even appear in the digital guide. You have to
grab this other block of stuff. On the other hand, I kind of like the idea of 3-minute stuff starting to come over, because I think there are so many goofy little gems that I think there is a lot of value in creating a packaged little half hour of these. I guess you could run something like, no more than 5, like, 7 of these little 3-minute shows with ad breaks. And that just seems like it's just perfect for like this short attention span audience. You could just give people a blast of these different anime flavors.
So you know what Crunchyroll has to do? They have to produce a French language dub of Banania and get that on TV stat.
Wouldn't you mean Funimation would have to do a French language dub of Banania?
Yeah, I guess that kind of brings us to the other big news. So what happened is an alliance has been formed between Crunchyroll and Funimation.
It's almost as if they've shared employees back and forth lately for like the past 3 years. Like, they'd have, like, a direct line to each other.
Yeah. So basically, they're going to be sharing content now. Nothing is going to be, like, no one show is going to be exclusive to either service.
Particularly when I'm on the podcast, my long-standing gripe is that, it's cool that these services, are there, but eventually this has to be played as a global game with a more unified library, because that's how you simply, you choke out opportunities for piracy by simply saying, like, why bother? Every simulcast you will give a fuck about. You can subscribe to one service for dub or the other service for subtitles, or if you want both, 2 services that will still run you less than 2 Japanese Blu-rays or 2 Blu-ray box sets annually, and get every simulcast in HD on your phone, on your PlayStation, etc., plus a library that you could never personally afford in depth.
Only a few titles have been put onto Crunchyroll from Funimation so far.
It's obviously they've got a huge pile of stuff to plug in, because Funimation's library has grown by, they have most of the old ADV library, they have most of the old Genion library, they have a considerable part of Bandai's library. There's just a litany of things to try and jam into that pipeline from Crunchyroll's end, and Crunchyroll being a digital first media company isn't going to half-ass that. Like, that's going to be put up there with care and quality, because I do really think a huge piece of this is, and it really plays into, I think there was a little foreshadowing on this, on Miles's side, where he's talking a lot about anime economics, like over the past few weeks. Miles, who works for Crunchyroll, if you don't know, and who's quite an anti-Twitter personality, has gone on some very beautiful multi-tweet tirades where he breaks down like why anime piracy and streaming is bullshit. If or pirate anime streaming as opposed to legitimate anime streaming, and how much more money that puts in the industry, and how if the whole problem is, you don't have access to all the simulcasts on one thing, that's kind of nonsense. Well, now it's fully nonsense. Every simulcast will be available on Crunchyroll effectively. I mean, what's left over is a rounding error, day and date, and then very shortly afterwards, the dubs for that will be on, for anything worth dubbing that isn't just completely niche like Banana, will be dubbed in on Funimation. And if you subscribe to both services, you're getting everything subtitled, everything dubbed.
I think overall, like, this sort of alliance, which I'm pretty sure happened very suddenly.
I think this is something they've probably been kicking around for a bit.
Not too long, because remember, Crunchyroll announced their dubs and home video releases in AX at the beginning of July.
But I don't think that necessarily precludes them. I think that's them having an A plan or a B plan while this other stuff's coming together. Because there's a bunch of stuff that for them to maybe even secure the licenses, they needed to follow through on these following things.
Yeah. So then it wasn't for a few weeks until after that when we started hearing some rumblings happening with certain industry people on Twitter and social media.
That just means that they were getting closer to the ink drying. I don't think that necessarily precludes there being a bit more of a lead. Until they say otherwise, I'm going to be like, there's no way that there isn't just like, if only so that they can keep the people they license from happy, there must be just some incredible legal footwork going here. Because, I mean, if you're not familiar with it, like, you ask any industry guy and they just say, like, anything where you would need one signature in the West, contractually you probably need 10 or 20, for Japanese stuff. So the fact that they've somehow managed to put this deal together, either they've done an amazing sort of, like, they're in a position where once it's in their ball court, they can divvy it however, so that they basically, whoever they license from has no say in whether they like this or not. Or they've managed to clear amazing amount of content and gain an incredible level of trust from the Japanese studios and licensing partners and media companies to be allowed to do this. Because honestly, I do think this does play into, like, one of my, like, long-standing things is what I've said about Crunchyroll is they play a global game. They aren't trying to win anime in America. They're trying to win anime distribution pretty much everywhere but Japan. And the fact that they've started into co-pros means they'll gladly be the streaming service there as well if the opportunity arises.
That does bring up one point I have to make.
This is North America,
Canada, and the U.S. only. This does not affect other markets.
Well, there's a lot of footnotes in that too. There's some they have some footnotes for some other markets there.
Possibly, but overall, what we're seeing is like a turn against the fragmentation we're seeing in the market right now. A lot of people have been interpreting this as anti-competitive and monopolistic, which I suppose is technically true, but it's not a bad thing, because in this case, you're competing with services like Kiss Anime that literally, for the most part, have everything, which is a big mark against a lot of the legal services. And now they have, and they at least have major ammunition against that.
And also, I don't think it's monopolistic when your other competitors in the legal streaming space are Netflix with a multi-billion-dollar market cap and Amazon with a multi-billion-dollar market cap.
That's
and
the
Hulu
other side of the
with
situation.
A multi-billion-dollar market cap. And the thing is, you're up against multi-billion-dollar market cap companies who are then on top of it neglecting this niche space. So you either have a choice of you bring yourself together and you offer what is, put it this way, if they were merging together and then jacking prices up, one, you would basically, you would see the territory to piracy anyways. And, two, it would definitely be in the monopolistic thing. They are clearly in a mode where they're like, we have to shut out any, put it this way, we have to really make the argument being, it's like, okay, if you're flat broke, but you still somehow have internet, that's pretty much your only excuse for not spending the $60 a year to get access to one or the other of these services and literally having essentially every anime worth watching at your access. And I mean, like, you're talking a catalog that includes so many classics. I don't think Miles would have let loose. It's like, by the way, we've done the math, we've done the numbers, we monitor the traffic. We know that all the traffic on the pirate streams is for stuff that we simulcast or our competitor in Funimation, then competitor, simulcasted. Yeah. That basically is saying...
I believe he pointed out that Macross Delta was actually not very popular on the pirate.
Yeah, so you can't be like, well, it doesn't have Macross Delta. It's like, yeah, that sucks, and Harmony Gold's a piece of shit for constantly fucking with Macross in America. There's no way around that, and if anybody from Harmony Gold wants to take it up with me, seriously, come to me on Twitter. What you've done to that property, what you've done to Shoji Kamori's legacy in anime in the West is a tragedy.
His good legacy.
His good legacy. Oh, well, here's the other thing is, you are leaving also, you're just shitty business people. Yeah. You're leaving money on the table. Maybe not as much as people would like to admit.
We are talking about a business that is floating pretty much entirely because of real estate they own in Los Angeles.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe you could just divest that license and just focus on real estate.
I have noticed a lot of people...
Harmony Land.
Just going back to Macross, many people on social media have been joking about the idea that this collaboration could lead to, companies teaming up and taking down Harmony Gold, but that might actually be a real possibility now. Or at least they might have that power to overcome some problems that they weren't able to overcome before in Japan. Who knows? We'll see.
I think at least they can go to Harmony Gold and be like, look, we'll do literally everything in what is essentially the best for every market. We will have Funimation, the kings of anime home video, who have understood that market clearly better than any of their competitors.
I'd say that Discotheque are the kings of anime home video. Well, I guess it depends how you're looking at it.
No, I'm talking by volume and by longevity.
Yeah.
You have an incredibly established group of people who will guarantee that you will monetize the home video as best as possible.
Yeah.
In terms of track record. You have the streaming team that will make sure that if you've got, this will be as good as it's gonna get in terms of monetization on that angle. You're gonna make as much money as you can out of this. And certainly more, if you're being honest with yourself, than you are on your own. So it's a pity they're not a publicly traded company, because it'd be very easy for activist investors to say that what they're doing is clearly not in the best interest of the company. But,
I'm still concerned that, we're seeing the move against fragmentation here in Canada and the US. That may not be I don't think that is the case in other territories right now. In fact, it may actually complicate things more in the UK, because Funimation was just starting to roll out there, and their role in the UK is very unclear at this point. And I think there are at least two other services there that are fairly competitive. So
that might be a long-term thing. Like, I think this is also, if it turns out, if this works well, Funimation will profit by it. Crunchyroll will be able to go to similar home video companies that aren't necessarily geared up around working on streaming and don't necessarily have the ability to make that pivot and say, look, we can cut you the same deal. Maybe we can even cut you an even better deal because of the rules that you have and what you have in those licenses. So this may become a pattern. And I don't think it's a bad pattern so long as the prices stay reasonable and so long as it's doing what it is doing, which is it's putting money in the hands of animators making literally starvation wages. I mean, that's the flip side of it, is it's like, when you subscribe to one of these services, you are helping put more money into that industry to at least either employ more animators at starvation wages, or hopefully maybe pay the animators a little better.
It is possible. A long-standing criticism against Funimation has been that they license titles for all of the Americas, but only release in the English-speaking territories, and just sit on the Latin America licenses. And now those might finally sort of emerge.
Well, that depends on the deal, and that depends on the deals they've cut. But I mean, Crunchyroll is going to be like, look, you've got this stuff here. You don't have to do dubs for this. You don't have to worry about that part. We're not even going to worry about that part. But we'll get subtitling in there, and it's yet another. We'll cut another leg out from underneath the people who want to stream this stuff illegally.
It's also really funny how Funimation's streaming service could never really get subtitles working properly and would always have hard subbed streams and everything. And their solution to that problem has been just let Crunchyroll do it.
Yeah,
and that's what's great, is that in this agreement, both of the companies have just sort of recognized
each other's strengths,
their strengths and weaknesses. Funimation has acknowledged that
streaming's not a fucking zoo for them.
They cannot gain the space that Crunchyroll has. And they certainly can't gain the kind of space that the pirate streaming sites have, which is what Crunchyroll has to gain. Like, they're in a different ballpark altogether compared to Funimation. Funimation comparatively is a niche that works best when you want dubbed content. So, having one service that focuses exclusively on sub content, and then one service that focuses, I don't think exclusively on dubbed content. I think they're still going to have some sub stuff on Funimation.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a bit of back and forth there, but I think the main thing is this. They're playing to each other's strengths, one, and two, it does free them up to play their best possible games. Funimation gets to play a great North American home video and English streaming game, and they get to play that to its fullest. This gives Crunchyroll that much more ammunition in their long-term game, which is we do subtitled anime globally, every language, that we can turn a profit on. Even if it's the littlest profit, that's still money that goes back to the licensors for the most part, and it totally fits with that. And that's part of why I would think they would even if it's not part of this initial deal, if it's working out, they will want to come back for those Latin American rights. Crunchyroll is setting themselves up such that they are going to have content in every widely spoken language on Earth for the purposes of subtitling. This Funimation deal, if not immediately, if in future deals, by virtue of getting access to their Latin American content and licenses, provides them with even more ammunition in that. Only if you're speaking a very niche language do you have any excuse to be pirating anime, and only that niche language, or you don't have some secondary, more widely spoken language in your repertoire. You've basically monetized anime as fully as possible. Like, they have done as much as they can for the companies they have licensed this stuff from to extract money back out of it and get that back to them, which of course a pirate service does not do. It does not extract any money back for the actual companies.
In case anybody listening to this podcast is not fully sold on the idea of legal streaming, rest assured, the money that you pay for a Crunchyroll subscription does indeed directly subsidize the shows that you watch on the service. This has been explained and demonstrated again and again. By Crunchyroll and similar streaming services. If anything, it's like the most democratic way of supporting television shows possible. Is to watch them on the service. And this goes for if you watch the shows with ad support as well. Of course, but that's another thing. Is this going to affect library accessibility in Canada? That's something that is kind of in the back of my mind. I guess if you're not aware, Crunchyroll's library is not available to non-subscribers after a certain period of time. If shows are up for 13 weeks after they first air, after that you need a subscription to access them, which is, it's a total bullshit kind of situation that we still haven't gotten a proper explanation about. And I'm just curious, I'm just wondering, will this, I guess, obviously we don't know, we can only speculate.
Yeah, I think longer...
is this on one hand could this fix this problem on Crunchyroll? Or, conversely, could it encourage Funimation to pull a similar,
I think longer term, it's the kind of thing where if they can more comfortably own that space, and thus charge, get real ad dollars out of it, it's easier for them to offer that as an ad-supported thing as opposed to a subscription-based thing.
Yeah, but that's the whole thing. I mean, I guess it comes back to this question as to whether or not ad-supported streaming can even work in Canada. It's starting to appear that it can't.
I'm
really happy that services like Tubi are giving it a shot, but you don't even see ads pop up half the time on that service in Canada, which I understand is not the case in the US.
I think it's the kind of thing where you need to reliably be in the space. It's part of the reason why I think, besides our CanCon laws, why brands don't always come up here and broadcasting as well, is because you kind of need to know that you're going to actually be able to get the ad buys to make it viable. And we are a smaller market, and and while we're right next to the US with 99% of the same brands, it's different company. It's Coca-Cola Canada making an ad buy versus Coca-Cola America.
If you haven't, right? If you have not maintained relationships with advertisers for decades already, it's really tough to get in on the ad market in Canada. And I think that's a big reason why streaming services are having such a hard time, because most of them are new. Which, and then it's actually, but then even Show Me and Crave don't have ad supported options, which shows that, and they're run by the big telcos, so.
I mean, but the thing is, the big telcos don't necessarily want to undercut their like other subscription offerings.
That too.
And I think they're also, the big telcos are not the ones who are going to be data driven necessarily when it comes to trying to push their advertisers into this new thing. Like they have no incentive to.
Yeah, I still say ad-based streaming in general is a method that is so entrenched in just the US in US audience trends, in just the way it's built from the ground up, that it can't really be translated properly to other countries. It is a system that is very much designed only to work in the US, and was designed that way without really considering the context of other countries. Because I mean, you don't really hear like about ad-supported streaming working in any country outside of the US ever. It's not just Canada.
Well, not for this heavier duty content. Like YouTube makes tons of money everywhere off of there.
Okay, yeah, YouTube.
But I think that's the thing is you then have to, in a sense, but YouTube gets the advantage of essentially they're an advertising company first by virtue of Google as the parent company, even if they weren't originally an advertising company first, which is why they built such a good video service to start with and were worth acquiring. They were then monetized by a company that was an advertising company first. And understands that you do crazy levels of micro-targeting and all that kind of stuff. And I think for niche media, like anime, you have to own a lot. You have to be unquestionably the owner of that space in a country. Just like the way YouTube is unquestionably the owner of space in many countries. And to the extent to which they aren't, their competing services still run lots of ads. There's still tons of ads on Dailymotion or something in Europe. You have to really be able to like, there's a level of lock-in that it's put this way. You can get there, and there's reason for the purposes of heading off, again, another disincentivation of piracy, saying like, look, we'll give you a standard def stream with some ads. You've, again, locked out these, you nail down these little arguments.
But again, that's YouTube. YouTube is very different in the way it works. Most companies don't see YouTube as a viable way of funding like studio produced content. It's mostly I don't want to say individually produced content, because most YouTube personalities are not individuals. They're groups of people.
They're groups who are starving.
Yeah.
No, some of those guys eat great.
Yeah,
right?
But I mean, you mentioned like just being the name to claim a space in the zone in Canada, or in anywhere, but here in this case in Canada specifically. Netflix, I think is still going to be like the big streaming, the streaming name here, no matter how you market it. And I think that has definitely shaped the market towards subscription services anyway. So that's two marks against,
trying to do an ad-based thing is people are already used to subscribing. Yeah. I think towards that end, that may be the other thing is they're like, well, people are already used to subscribing. Literally, I mean, Netflix seems to be yielding the space because they're not adding much new stuff. While they're co-proing stuff, they'd have to co-pro a lot more before they become a reason to subscribe to Netflix, right? They'd have to have a lot of content before you're like, I'm subscribing to Netflix for anime over Crunchyroll. But if Netflix has trained everybody to subscribe, Crunchyroll would be kind of foolish not to monetize on it, because it does give them much more money to send back.
To an extent, but the thing is that Crunchyroll is ultimately only going to get subscriptions from people who are anime fans and want to watch lots of anime. Shows that they have on there that might have crossover appeal can't, like this is the thing. Crunchyroll is pretty much going to be, if it wasn't already, it is now the
place to stream anime.
The place to stream anime. But it's only going to have that anime for, it's only going to still be seen as accessible for people who want anime specifically, and you're gonna have titles that are behind a kind of a wall for mainstream audience. I mean, case in point, Cowboy Bebop is now on Crunchyroll,
but it's going to be legacy. So if you want to see it subtitled, you're going to have to you'd have to shell out for a subscription.
Actually, it will be available to non-subscribers for
a bit,
for like 13 weeks. But here's the thing, also, is that this is like the best, I think actually streaming on Crunchyroll is probably the best exposure that Cowboy Bebop has ever had in Canada.
Well, in Canada, yeah.
And that's,
but I think,
in a way, it's good.
If you were in a position where you could just link somebody to who wasn't a fan and say, watch this, you will make a fan out of them, and you will then, that is of long-term value to anime as a medium, because you've now turned somebody into somebody who is going to likely contribute back monetarily and perpetuate the medium.
Yeah.
And that cuts off that pathway of that. your first exposure being through a legitimate thing that then gets you in. I think the flip side of that is this. I don't think necessarily your Netflixes and your Amazons are going to completely just abandon the space just because Crunchyroll's there.
I'm not saying they're going to abandon the space.
No, but the thing is, if I can at least, for those big titles, which tend to be your gateway titles, if I can point to them on a service somebody's probably already subscribed to, fine. And I think in the case for a lot of these things, I can probably say, go to Netflix and watch this. And then once they're into it and be like, okay, Netflix only has the baby shit. Here's the good stuff on Crunchyroll.
It's not that they have the baby shit.
Well, you know what I mean.
The stuff that Netflix has, it's not gateway stuff. Nobody's gonna watch Kuro Mukuro who isn't already an anime fan.
Yeah, no, but I'm talking about a lot of in terms of what they're gonna keep. What they're going to bother to keep if they buy anything off Funimation.
But that's the thing. They have not bought anything off of Funimation since January. I think Gunslinger Girl was the last title.
Yes, they haven't bought anything since January. I mean, if Netflix only had basically like stuff that had run on Toonami and that was it, just shows that had that kind of exposure, that because Toonami tends to pick, with very notable exceptions, gateway type shows. If that's all they had, that would be all I would need for the most part to get people into the medium of anime.
Yeah. Of course, it's also not in Netflix's interest to send people to Crunchyroll. So they're very much trying to compete with them, but a lot of money and just with a lot of money and not a lot of sense.
Well, and I think the flip side of it is this. It probably increases the value of Crunchyroll's catalog and Funimation's catalog to have this thing together in terms of now that you have sub and dub, it's a lot for going forward on some Crunchyroll titles. I wouldn't be shocked if there was secondary streaming runs. That's a possibility now because it's not really going to happen with sub-only content. So depending on what their licenses allow, there's that. But Funimation's certainly in a better position when it comes to something that Netflix says, oh man, this is one of these shows that we have to even kind of retain that audience. And be like, well, you know what? You have to give us extra because we're already monetizing this very strongly here. So we want this out of you for it. It's going to allow them to extract more money out of the mainline services because they're going to be able to go, particularly for the purposes of currently the United States, be like, hey, we're already making this stuff here. So if you want in on it, you're going to pay for that. And they're going to be able to extract a little rent on that. And that will let them turn around and co-promote more shows. I think there's some angles there because if Netflix wants to stay in the space at all, they're going to have to, they now have a real competitor in the space that essentially is already co-producing either of them were co-producing more shows than Netflix was and releasing them in a method that the target audience actually likes, unlike the way Netflix does it.
Also, keep in mind that that for them to have the incentive to put things on Netflix, they would need that incentive in the United States and Canada.
Yeah.
Because those licenses are always attached. When something is added when an anime is on Netflix in the US, it is always in Canada. They got that squared out a long time ago in case you weren't aware. But the thing is, in the States, it's that having that middle ground is not necessary because they still have, well, I guess maybe not Hulu because Hulu's subscription now, but what's the Yahoo, the free Yahoo thing?
That's pretty much dead, though. That's going to get
not Yahoo Screen, the new one that they've moved all the free Hulu content onto. That's where Cowboy Bebop is now.
That's so weird.
It is weird. In fact, I've kind of lost track of it because people aren't really talking about it that much.
No, anything Yahoo doesn't count. I think long term, I don't think anybody's going to be pointing anybody to Yahoo.
But anyway, there are more middle ground streaming services where, for instance, you can find Cowboy Bebop in the States. That does not exist in Canada. You don't have that middle ground for capturing casual viewers.
Yeah,
we're missing that completely in Canada still. And again, even though this Crunchyroll Funimation alliance is definitely an unquestionably good thing, in my opinion, it kind of also contributes to this problem even more.
I don't know. I don't think we would have suddenly gotten one if in its absence here. I don't think it would have helped us out in its absence. And I honestly think it's a lot easier for them now to maybe redact this idea of the cutoff on the catalog if they can go to advertising and say, literally, we will monetize you the entire anime watching audience because we have fucking every anime. I think it's a lot easier to say, your ad buy is literally anything, we have this locked. We are it outside of a rounding error's worth of titles. Most of which probably you wouldn't care to run ads on anyways. Anything worth running ads on, we can do so. I think that gives them the best possible leg up they're gonna get. If there's middle ground stuff, they're suddenly competing with those middle ground things for dollars, and it's even more of a, we can afford this on the things that are simulcasting, we can on our catalog. They're gonna, the only way you're gonna make that catalog reasonably ad supported is if you have basically everything ever worth having.
Well, we'll see about that. Only in Canada would this idea of discoverability be something that you'd even worry about.
Because we don't have a Toonami. We do not, until we have a broadcast block of some sort, or even just, one show stripping. At the moment, to be perfectly frank, the most anime thing running on Canadian television right now that isn't Cheese Sweet Home on Radio Canada is Steven Universe. So
the Iron Man anime is still running in charge. There is that.
There is that.
And it's still running in its same time slot.
I would contend Steven Universe is probably in some ways more anime than the Iron Man anime.
You know what? I think I would agree with you on that.
But that's the point. But that's the point. It's all put it this way. Because the kid who sees that and works out what the references are is suddenly going to be introduced to Initial D and Utena and Ava and Fully Cooley and all these other things they're nodding and making references to. They're more likely
or maybe new shit.
Yeah. Or new stuff. Well, no, but the thing is they're more likely to pick up stuff from trying to decode one of their favorite American cartoons at this point here in Canada. We just don't have the same amount of stuff out here.
Yeah. Oh, and Beyblade Burst.
Do we still have Pokemon?
Oh yeah, there's still Pokemon.
So there you go. But the thing is, what AS is running, One Punch Man. They're running, Toonami's running,
JoJo's Bizarre Adventure starts in a couple months.
That's really all you need to say.
Yeah.
We don't have a place for a JoJo's currently.
Well, that's the thing.
And that's one of those shows that, if somebody was flipping through channels and saw that, they'll stop, they'll want to know more. And, then if there's a streaming service where they're only getting the first 13 weeks, they're still getting the first 13 weeks of what's currently on. There's usually always one or two good things on. They'll get hooked and they'll go into the back catalog. Or they'll be like, I missed a bunch of this thing and it's in this back catalog. $7. I spend that on lunch.
Yeah. With the whole television exposure thing, I think people understand that, and we understand that, the audience obviously was much smaller on television than it used to be, and that's why a lot of people dismiss that idea. But even though technically something will reach more people on a service like Crunchyroll, I think you also have to remember that on television it will reach an audience that otherwise would never see it.
It doesn't pay attention. Crunchyroll is, and that's a straight medium is the message type thing. The internet, getting information on the internet is not a passive thing. You're always making choices that bring you to a place. TV is just I'm flipping. Yes, with channel guides that's changed, but a lot of the time people just flip, and you're not going to flip to Crunchyroll unless it's the Christmas special. Now, that said, I'm really hoping, as an aside here, I really want a Funny-Roll Crunchimation Christmas special. I want Justin Rojas and Miles and
Victoria and
Evan, all those guys.
Kids.
And of course, though, it still has to be hosted by Mike Toole. But I
think they should get Zach in there too. Zach Berchi from
actually, it should be Zach and Mike and Jacob. We need it. This should be the Annie Twitter Christmas special at this point.
Yeah.
Though I gotta say, at this point, one of the few things that isn't in there is, of course, Discotheque has been grabbing a lot of great licenses, and I don't know the extent to which any of that streamed, or where.
They're getting some stuff up. You can watch Space Adventure Cobra on Crunchyroll.
And that's the thing, though, so they're getting stuff up exactly with who you would think a rational company that focuses on physical media would do so.
That's the other thing. How are the other companies going to factor into this? It's hard to say, because Funimation and Crunchyroll, with the deal that they have, the symbiotic relationship that they've formed, it could potentially become very difficult for other companies to really penetrate that space. Obviously everybody immediately goes to Sentai and say, "Oh, Sentai is gonna die as a result," which is not true, because Sentai will live through fucking anything.
The people who run Sentai can run it on a shoestring for as long as they want. And the only reason I see Sentai ever going out is because they decide to do, it gets to the point where CPM got to, and they just decide, like, the CPM folks to cash out, like, we're done. We had our fun. Now we're just going to go around the world and hang out in Japan and turn up on TV unexpectedly. That's like, and I would.
You are referencing something specific there.
I am referencing specifically the former head of CPM, John O'Donnell.
Yeah.
Turned up in some sort of Japanese TV show at the airport, like he was going to Japan for, what was that? Like, I can't remember, but I mean, it's John O'Donnell. It's probably just to start hell and talk about how the anime ain't no Disney. It ain't no Looney Tunes. I got a chance to interview John O'Donnell for one of the old Two Zone podcasts, and he is a blast. But it's like, if they take the John O'Donnell route and bail, cool. That's fine. But I think Sentai is in a position where they can always, I would not blame.
We keep predicting the demise of the anime network, and it just never happens. They keep
figuring out other ways.
If anything, they keep doubling down on what they're doing. But it seems to be working for them. Somebody subscribes to that service.
Well, and I think the other thing is this, is like, if they eventually decide to roll it up on that and focus on home video, I don't think there is a I don't think that trying to leave your streaming to a company that's going to putting yourself in the biggest possible catalog for that, and using that basically as an advertisement you got paid for.
Yeah.
You didn't pay for that advertising. You were paid to be advertised.
The thing about Sentai
and using that to drive home video sales is a bad plan. Like, I think the other companies that are in this space, Viz, Sentai, when or if they ever bother with it, Right Stuff, obviously Discotheque already, anybody who's left in this space would be smart to, okay, so you're not going to get any of Crunchy's home video rights. That's going to Funimation. Look, you don't want to have to necessarily, Crunchy's going to be buying titles you never were going to afford anyways. You don't want to have to deal with how quickly you've got to get those things out.
Here's the thing, Sentai's bread and butter for the last few years has been titles that they didn't actually get the simulcast rights to.
True.
They're titles that Crunchyroll picked up,
simulcast,
and then they managed to get the home video rights to later.
Now, so that's
and
true.
That game is done.
They did kind of just cut Sentai off the knees because there's no more, hey, we're gonna get the Kyoto Animation home video rights for this thing.
So, like, moving forward, it's like, are they gonna just grab, like, one or two, like, well, probably one simulcast title every year, and just hope that it's a hit?
I think that's nuts.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, there is always, like, anime is a crazy medium. You never know what little niche thing actually is going to catch fire. There's a lot of so many times where people thought, the licensors didn't even think to get any merch made, and the show catches fire, and they're like literally 6 months behind the curve because of that, right? They try and get merch out there, try and get all this stuff out here. Like, Haruhi was one of these things that they did not think was going to, like, catch on. I thought it was going to do well.
We're going back a decade.
We're going back a decade, but it's a huge example of it because, like, that show just exploded. And the
Shirobako, let's go with that. Let's go with that example.
Well, the thing is Shirobako is even, like, more. You'd think it would be even more in the niche because it is the cartoon about making cartoons, and that's always that's fan wank. Yeah. And I guess what they didn't realize is, like, but everybody's a fan now. And again, just like nothing on the shelves to sate that sudden desire.
I think now there's a lot of merchandise coming out.
Yeah, but I mean, that's the whole point, is they're catching up like a year and a half later.
Yeah. We're talking, of course, the Japanese market with Shirobako. I think it's pretty not really popular with people outside of a very specific circle in
who's outside of any Twitter. That's what matters, I think, sometimes more for the merch game, because, I mean, occasionally a show can get popular in the States and then drive merch for it. Like, Cowboy Bebop probably we had more merch driven for it by the US audience than the Japanese audience.
It didn't have a lot of merch.
Yeah.
No.
That merch came basically much later as it found a global audience.
It still wasn't a lot.
It still wasn't a lot, but
Cowboy Bebop has made a crazy amount in home video sales over the years.
Oh, I know, disgusting.
Like, the fact that it's been able to float on home video sales alone in both Western and Japanese and other markets is a big testament to how popular it actually is worldwide.
But I mean, that's the thing, though, is like, there's totally the possibility, given that kind of history in anime over the years, of them catching something that was that year's Shirobako, that year's Cowboy Bebop, that year's Haruhi. That's certainly on the plate. If I were Sentai, I'd make the pivot to make my business model much more like Discotheque or Right Stuff's.
You know that Sentai is going to do the exact opposite of what they should be doing.
And still somehow not die.
Yeah.
They'll get away with it.
And then it'll give us more fuel to talk and complain about and have everyone wonder and speculate about what exactly
I'm just waiting for them to get that show of the year, and then someone be like, that's why I can't just subscribe to the thing, so I pirate, and I'll be like, go fuck yourself on Twitter to that person.
And then we have Viz, who is basically going to avoid working with Crunchyroll as long as they possibly can get away with it.
They're just really salty that another company was able to come into the Bay Area way later and eat their lunch.
Yeah.
Let's be real. Like, streaming to me strikes me as one of the rare instances where anime didn't lead technologically, commercially. Because anime commercially would often lead technologically. And the thing is and there's usually sort of a piracy lead time before that. Tape trading in the anime fandom. The idea of digital distribution, made a huge amount of sense for the pan-sub scene. And that's something where if the companies could have just put a twist on the licensor's arm, you could have built. I mean, you didn't necessarily have great broadband penetration, but you obviously had enough that people were patient enough to torrent and IRC titles. They could have built that. Like 2004, 2005. They could have been out ahead of Netflix. And that time could have been essentially by virtue of doing that could have led that in a way. But home video was doing so well, they kind of, it slid by them entirely.
Well, also the perceptions of the Japanese market. It played a huge role in that. Japan resisted online streaming for so long.
Yeah, no, I mean, their hands were bound in a very different way, whereas convincing Japan of a new cool physical medium was not an issue. They had too many of them. I mean, like, Laserdisc was huge in Japan.
Oh, yeah.
In a way that it never was here.
Tower Records still going strong in Japan.
Yeah, no, like, it was crazy. Not only still going strong in Japan, they're like the Tower Records of old in the US and then some.
People buy CD singles in Japan.
No, it's not even that people buy CD singles. It's that the depth of catalog in a Japanese Tower Records is massive.
Yeah.
Like, there are nerdcore rappers. They have their CD is in no physical store except in Tower Records in Japan.
Yeah.
That's suddenly where it's viable.
It is such a weird market.
No, it's an incredibly strange market, for physical medium. And yeah, so I mean, the flip side of it is, like I said, this deal may really show that there's been a realization. It's like you concede the environment to the convenience of piracy, or you can make legal stuff so much more convenient. And the fact of the matter is all of these services still require you to have a laptop or whatever, and can give your laptop a million different kinds of viruses. Like, there's whole stickies and posts on these discussion sites for these piracy things of how to avoid all the viruses they're going to give you. And instead you'd be like, dude, $60 a year, and it's just there. You have an internet connection anywhere in Canada or the United States. If you have a T-Mobile, cell phone plan, so your Crunchyroll 0 rated, you can literally stream all the anime you want.
Let's not get positive about that now.
No, but I mean, to outline,
0 rating is a very bad thing.
It's a very bad thing. I actually got 1,000.
Write your MPs about this.
I got 1,000. Well, I think just about 1,000 upvoted post explaining 0 rating on Reddit. There's a thread about how Europe was going to allow 0 ratings. Like, somebody's like, "What's that?"
That's not because you informed them. That's because it's a circle jerk.
Well, no, that person was informed. The people who upvoted me were circle jerking.
Yeah.
But I mean, 0 rating's a bad thing. But that said, the whole point is like, if with the legal streaming services and any internet connection, and any device essentially, because everything has Crunchyroll on it. It's just all I can't imagine taking the anime library that I've built up in DVD or around with me recently. It has stayed sealed in Tupperware boxes for the past 7 years in the United States. It has not been opened once. Meanwhile, what has happened now with Crunchyroll and Funimation merging their catalogs and making it available through their services, I have access to more anime than in 10 times as many boxes as I have down there, and I have 500 DVDs there, but it would be like having 5,000, and I have access to it through my cell phone.
Well, on that note, there's one issue we should probably go back to, which is the home video licenses that Crunchyroll announced back in July.
True.
So again, going back to that deal, Crunchyroll licensed several titles, including Twin Star Exorcists, the new Berserk anime, Myriad Colors Phantom World, Big Order, and Gintama. Their plan was to dub those shows themselves and distribute them on home video. So what was revealed in the new plan is that Funimation is going to be handling production of the dubs, apparently, of the new dubs moving forward, and will distribute the home video for Crunchyroll. They're taking responsibility for the dubbing and home video distribution, which is the areas that they are well known for Crunchyroll titles moving forward. Apparently it is unconfirmed if they're going to have any involvement in the titles that Crunchyroll already announced.
Yeah.
It looks like wherever they sent those titles to before, those projects are probably going to stand. They're probably going to...
I don't think they want to spend the money to redo it.
Oh yeah, it would be insane.
And especially because it sounds like that they're going to have a massive flood of new titles that they have to just keep up with.
And Funimation apparently said they're massively expanding their dubbing resources as well.
So if you want to get into voice acting, unfortunately, you may still, but at least the opportunities have greatly probably expanded, but you're going to be in Dallas-Fort Worth.
Yeah.
Essentially all the anime is going to be dubbed there going forward.
So it's not clear what's going on with the titles that Crunchyroll announced previously. The word on the street has been that there has been some Canadian involvement in the dubbing of those programs. We have to be a little careful about how we speculate about that for two reasons. One is that while information has leaked through the cracks that has pretty much 100% confirmed that Gintama, the first 50 or so episodes of Gintama have been dubbed in Canada, very likely in Vancouver. This information has not been officially confirmed by Crunchyroll or anyone else yet. And also any word that any other title has been dubbed in Canada or anywhere is completely unsubstantiated at this point. And two, you have to consider that any prediction that we have made on this show has never proven to be correct. So
saying we'll never get anything here.
Take any of our speculation here about this with a grain of salt.
Well, and I will say this. If Funimation wanted to get a lot of shit done fast, the easiest way to probably spin up would be to say, there is already a group that will cost less than our existing group of people up here in Canada.
But we've been saying that for years.
We've been saying that for years, but they've never been under the gun so heavily.
Yeah.
They've got a lot to get done very quickly. And I could see even, and the thing is you don't even necessarily have to send the whole thing up here. You could do the actual script stuff down there with their script people and then just send the scripts up here. You could just literally have just the direction and voice acting up here if you were so inclined. You can split this up however you'd like.
Depends. Like there are different economies to how you handle it.
But the thing is, at the moment, the way they have made it, certainly from what we have heard, and the way they have made it sound is that suddenly Funimation has to expand dramatically to get all this new stuff done quickly.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's, while I was really kind of hoping that if stuff was going to be dubbed up here, this is suddenly...
anywhere besides Texas, because this is gonna mean like almost every major title is going to be dubbed in Texas.
Yeah, everything's going to be... Yeah, all those guys who moved out to LA... better hope that they really made that pivot to game and mainstream voice acting, because otherwise...
Aniplex titles will still be dubbed in LA.
Yeah.
For certain. Aniplex keeps their production in LA so that they can oversee it directly.
Yeah.
This is what their word on their process has been.
Yeah.
And of course Aniplex will still release their titles directly, probably put them on every platform they want, but they're going to be handling the dubs themselves, almost certainly on those.
Yeah.
No question. But yeah, like I really hope. I think there is definitely reason to believe that some of the projects that they've done so far
have happened here,
and I hope that if they started the projects here, that they finish them. At the very least, Gintama, which was confirmed on the CRTC website, is being dubbed having 50 episodes dubbed in Canada. I would hope that, and you have to remember with Gintama, there's a lot of Gintama. There's like 2 series. Not all the manga has been adapted, so there may very well be more Gintama. If it is being dubbed in Canada, I hope they keep it in Canada, because it would at least be a foot in the door to possibly send other projects up here as well.
Well, the other thing that I'd like to see is if there's some stuff that's dubbed up here and sent against the CRTC, I do think that especially because Crunchyroll for the moment has this 13-week wall, the best thing that they can do to advertise their brand and their service in Canada and get people at least looking at what's outside of the 13-week wall, and certainly then would translate into people subscribing. If they have a show that is theirs that they get on TV here, that drives subscriptions. Driving subscriptions drives people in the anime fandom.
It still hasn't happened yet.
It still hasn't happened yet. But the thing is, it can't if there aren't things being made here. And the thing is, you need to keep doing that until you find the thing that can air.
We have repeated this over and over again, and I think it is true that if Crunchyroll were sending lots of projects to Vancouver, it would only be a matter of time before some killer app got dubbed in Vancouver, and then that killer app is something that would get on TV on Adult Swim, and would have to get on TV here.
Having a big show that you're just leaving too much damn money on the table not to broadcast it.
But which would be like Attack on Titan. But if we're dubbed in Canada, you would have the CanCon benefit, and that
matters. Until that doesn't matter,
which could be 2 or 3 years from now with the review going on with CanCon policy,
which is not. You don't want to leave that to chance. There's a huge...
it's kind of unfortunate because, still, there would have been that perfect little window where something might have stuck, and now if everything's going to Texas, those chances are going to decrease a lot of some killer app being dubbed in Vancouver that...
Well, I mean,
could wind up on a network here.
Especially because if nothing else, let's say that they decide to use Vancouver, to try and keep up. They're not going to be sending, unless for some reason the Japanese licensor tells them that they want people who are only in this pool, which it does happen, but not often.
Toei will probably continue to send projects here. But they don't hold on to very much. World Trigger is a big exception, and we still don't really know what's going on with that particular dub.
There's an aspect of the odds of even if a ton of stuff got sent up here. Now that Funimation's also got it, they're going to try and keep the stuff that's A grade probably in their team, if only because it helps them with QC, right? It's in their zone. They know what they've got. They're happier to them from a business perspective. Doesn't matter that maybe it'd be just as well dubbed up here, maybe better, depending on the project. They're going to be inclined, even if they borrow Vancouver for stuff, it's going to be borrowing. It's going to be the B and C simulcasts, not the A simulcasts. And we need, unless it's one of those rare B or C's that's suddenly the huge title, odds are it's the big A simulcast. That would have been the killer app. That would have been the one that would have gotten on television. Oh wait, it's not CanCon. It's not 2 to 3 years from now, where maybe that doesn't matter. And we're stuck with no shit on TV.
Well, since Crunchyroll is in the bizarre situation of having the home video rights to Kabaneri of the Iron Fortress, but not the streaming rights, I really hope that they sent that project to Vancouver and got it dubbed here. Not only because it is a big title that someone might bite on, but the irony of Kabaneri not streaming in Canada but being dubbed in Canada is it's too much. I need that.
Yeah, it would be kind of satisfying. Because that's Amazon, right?
Yes.
And the best part is it would be dubbed within a stone's throw of Amazon employees who can't watch this show.
There is speculation. There is speculation that Amazon's going to launch in Canada soon. This is largely being pushed by some certain media websites that keep coming back to this idea of either Amazon launching or buying Show Me or something like that.
I think the biggest
they have yet to substantiate this, but they keep pushing this idea out there. One more piece of news I just wanted to finish on. Lee Talker, the Vancouver-based voice actor, finally was able to officially confirm today that he was the voice of Frieza in the fabled ocean dub of Dragon Ball Z Kai.
That has never seen the light of day.
That has been more or less confirmed to exist for like 4 or 5 years now. It was finished at least, I think 4 years ago now. And it's just sitting in a vault somewhere. And and actually, one of the main reasons we know about this is because Lee Talker constantly kept talking about playing Frieza on Twitter and was constantly told that he had to go and delete the tweets. And then a whole bunch of other information leaked out. And apparently for a while, voice actors were being told not to talk about it or pretend that it didn't exist. So we really have no idea what's going on with this thing.
That's so weird.
Today, when we're recording this, which is Thursday, Lee Talker confirmed on Facebook that he is the voice of Frieza in that dub. So I don't know. I don't even know what to think of that at this point.
I just think it's hilarious that there exists this, and because Kai is 100 episodes straight up, right?
104, I think, and that is not counting the Boo episodes, which were a separate arc done.
Oh my god. So at least 104 episodes of dub. And on one hand, it's cool. These guys got a paycheck. But on the other hand, it's just going to be the weirdest thing. Like, it's like, it reminds me of that, now infamous Kevin Smith story of doing a documentary for Prince that was put in the vault. It's like, I can understand why an eccentric artist gets a documentary made by a well-known filmmaker and puts it in a vault. I don't get why an explicitly commercial anime enterprise is spending also just the vastly larger amount of effort that goes into hundreds of episodes of dubbing, and it's in the void.
It's starting to look very possible that we will see Jerry Lewis's The Day the Clown Cried before we see the ocean dub of Dragon Ball Z Kai.
Man.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm happy with the Funimation dub.
I'm pretty sure that there are books from J.D. Salinger we'll see before we see that ocean dub.
And I don't want to see it. I'm happy with the Funimation dub.
Yeah, no,
but it's just a curiosity at this point.
Yeah, no, that's it's like now like weird ghost media. It's like, did you hear about the hidden ocean dub? Like, it's like borderline creepypasta stuff. It's fantastic.
And actually, like, these days when just about everything surfaces eventually.
Yeah, no,
to have this one thing that people can talk about definitely existing, but nobody being able to see or give a first-hand account about. It's kind of tantalizing.
Well, no, like in an era where shows constantly leak online before their official broadcast, and somehow there's this you'd think one episode could somehow seep out. This huge hundreds of episodes of content, and it's just nowhere to be found is amazing.
Yeah. We need to savor this while we can, because we don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, no. I hope we come back to this, like, eventually weeks later, and it's like, man, that was, dodged a bullet there. Like, really great, and we're just like,
And that's a wrap. Big thanks to Karl Olson for coming on the show. Also thanks to Karl for composing the theme song to this podcast. You can find it and his other stuff at ultraclystron.com. If you want to contact me, you can reach me on Twitter at ZonNCanada or email zonncanada@gmail.com. As always, if you know anybody who might be interested in this show, please recommend it to them. I'm your host, Jesse Betteridge. See you again.